I call upon Cllr Simon Morrall to move the amendment.
Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor. I rise to move the amendment. It is an absolute pleasure that I stand here today and talk about this strategy a year on from delivering my maiden speech and motion on suicide prevention. Deputy Lord Mayor, one of the reasons I became a councillor was to challenge my bias against the state. And while in many areas these biases have been inflamed, I'm happy to say today that this is one area where my bias has certainly been challenged. In what I'm told was a rare spectacle, on the 6th of November 2018, this council chamber was united in support, voting unanimously for a landmark motion on mental health. During a heartwarming and emotional debate, a veteran talked about post-traumatic stress, I spoke about losing my friend, and a member came out and talked about his past experiences, his past suicidal intentions. I concluded that debate by saying, as the largest council in Europe, we should strengthen our resolve as a city and have a zero tolerance to suicide. We should aim to smash the stigma surrounding mental health and, as the second city, become the gold standard for the rest of the country to follow. Deputy Lord Mayor, this document is the first stage in achieving that ambition, stating that 76% of suicides in Birmingham are men and most commonly occur in ages between 30 and 49. 53% of suicides in the last 10 years have taken place at home. High-risk groups include people with a history of self-harm, people with alcohol and drug-related problems, and people in care of mental health services. I'm also happy to see the black and ethnic minority community has been mentioned, as they often face a cultural stigma around mental health, which can prevent them from seeking the help they need. There's also an economic cost. For every suicide that happens in the UK, it costs the economy £1.7 million. So if you ever want to get my colleagues in Whitehall to pay attention, just ask them to times that figure by 5,821 people who take their lives every single year. But above all, suicide is preventable, and by working together we can reduce this tragic loss of life and provide better support for those who are left behind. It's clear from the document as well that skills and employment play a key factor in suicide prevention. Adults who live alone are significantly more likely to have common mental disorders. The CMD rate in employed people is 15.2%, compared to double that, or almost 30% for unemployed. So it's clear that getting people off welfare and into work doesn't just provide people dignity, you are literally saving someone's life. Mental health and skills trainings are two areas that I am deeply passionate about, and so I'm delighted to hear that our newly elected government is bigging up and talking up skills in deprived areas, and this is something that I can assure the Chamber that myself and the new MP will be holding the government to account. But Deputy Lord Mayor, it's not just economic. Even high-profile figures have taken their own life. The late Robin Williams said, "I used to think the worst thing in life was to end up all alone." It's not. The worst thing in life is to end up with people that make you feel all alone. People require purpose in their lives. They need to be appreciated. Dare I say, they need to feel loved. It's one thing to say we need people to talk about their feelings. It's another to simply say thank you, I appreciate you, and I value your work. And so I'd like to take this opportunity to say thank you to Councillor Pauline Hamilton and to Dr. Justin Varley for putting together this document and the work you've done. It really is appreciated. However, this is not the end, it is only the beginning, and I'm happy to see that there is a cross-party working group that's been set up to develop this plan further, and I would like to see this expanded to all walks of life, from the Royal British Legion to the Police Federation to teachers, businesses and professionals. I would also like to see more support offered to our emergency services, who are often the first on the front line when they go out to whether it's a home, whether it's a bridge or a railway line. And I think we also need to be doing more to support our military veterans, because it's not enough to just rely on the Armed Forces Covenant. And let's not forget the Samaritans, who are the front line, after all, of suicide prevention. They should be much more involved on both the working group and the strategy. But Deputy Lord Mayor, let's not beat around the bush. The majority of suicides happen to men. Currently, if you're a man in the UK under the age of 45, the biggest risk to your life right now is yourself. That is a shocking revelation. And while this suicide prevention strategy highlights that we need to encourage men to talk about their issues, I would argue it doesn't go far enough if we're not prepared to listen to them. Many people would argue there is currently a crisis of masculinity in this country, but not many people want to talk about it. Many children these days are growing up without any male role models whatsoever. 90% of single parents are female, 96% of parents who are fighting for custody of their children are men. You won't find any male role models in schools either. Only 25% of school teachers are men, and this is even lower in primary schools at 15%. Girls are much more likely to finish school with good grades. If you're a boy, you are 3 times more likely to be expelled. And men are also less likely to go to university. Men make up a lot of domestic violence victims as well, but there are only 93 spaces available for male refuge in comparison to 4,000 refugees for women. And of course, as we all know, 86% of rough sleepers are men, 84% of hidden homeless men are men. Men are much more likely to be victims of violent crime. 70% of the murders are men. 90% of workplace deaths are men. Men serve 64% longer prison sentences than women and are 4 times more likely to be imprisoned for exactly the same crime. Also, rape and sexual violence also affects men, particularly in the gay community. A recent survey has found that 62% of gay men have been groped without consent. And of course, if you're a man, you're much more less likely to come forward about such things. Lord Mayor, Deputy Lord Mayor, we don't just need to smash the stigma about men talking about their issues, we also need to smash the stigma about talking about men's issues. Full stop. There is absolutely no point in asking men to come out and open up about their feelings if we live in a society that will refuse to listen to them or even acknowledge that they can be victims. For far too long, our boys and young men, particularly from working class backgrounds, whether black or white, have systematically been discriminated against by academic institutions that have progressively been hijacked by political dogma and misandrous ideologies known as intersectionality. This, for generations, has fueled a lot of anger and bitterness, which I believe has directly contributed to the last decade of political decline. You can see this everywhere, from the rise of gangs and knife crime to the rise of populism on both the left and the right. This issue has been staring us in the face for so long, yet so many of us have chosen to ignore it, stepping over it like homeless people in the street, who ironically happen to mostly be men. Now, Lord Mayor, this is not about men, girls versus boys. I fully support women's emancipation. But you do not help women in female empowerment by ignoring men. These men are your brothers, they are your sons, they are your friends, and they deserve the dignity to be heard. Lord Mayor, it's time we put identity politics where it belongs in the bin, to start putting people into boxes, start treating people as people. Only then will you live in a truly plural society, and you cannot call yourself an egalitarian until we all start to acknowledge that boys have issues too. Thank you, Lord Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you. I'll call upon Councillor Alex Yip to second